Okay, welcome to Simple Healthy Life, where our goal is to have insightful discussions on topics that we find interesting. And hopefully, those discussions are also very real. We're talking in the car that we like to have our real discussions. And you're one of the people that I often have the most real conversations with. And I was saying, well, it's weird because a lot of time when I talk with people, it feels like we're playing patty cake. It's kind of like it's social code. Like you say this, I say that. Hey, how you doing? Good. How are you? Good. Later. Um, so the topic of today that I was hoping that we would kind of go back and forth about was change, and maybe why we change, how we change. Do we just continuously change, or do we have to implement change? Is change good? Is it inevitable? So, what do you think about that? Do, does someone just naturally change, or do you think that they have to work on themselves and set goals, and even if those are loose goals, how does change come about?
So I'll go with the easy one. Change is constant.
Mm,
Whether we notice it or not is another thing. Um, I don't know. I'm not sure if you. I think you change either way. But if you do set goals and you are disciplined about noticing the change, I think you change faster and in a more specific way. But it's kind of that age old question, though, isn't it? Like people don't change, they say.
yeah.
Right? Well, is that because fundamentally you stay the same, or maybe this gets into actually having to choose to change from a fundamental standpoint versus the ancillary things you're going to change. You might change your diet, you might change your pant size, you might change your audience, you might change a lot of that stuff, but fundamentally deep down, do you change?
Mm. Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think you're right when you say most things are changing. Change is the only constant, the only thing that you can actually count on happening, right? And I think that in some ways we facilitate sameness, right? We are world champions at being exactly who we were yesterday. And I deal with this so much, and I have this conversation so much as I'm talking with people that they'll often bring up, well, Ryan, this change that you want me to do, or this thing you want me to think about, or this belief you want me to cultivate, that's just not me. Well, what are we doing here? Are we working on ourselves? Are we working to be more self-serving, or are we just fixated on what it is that we've done before? One of the most important things that I think someone can believe is that you don't have to be who you were in a previous moment, and that previous moment could be as soon as when we did the introduction to this podcast, right?
Absolutely. So, as I think about change and I think about everybody wants to change, right? For the good.
Hmm.
Everybody wants to make a change in their life. I wish I was more this way. I wish I could get up earlier in the morning. I wish I didn't eat that stuff at night before bed. I'll just use my own problems. I don't know. I mean, you guys got your own problems too, I'm sure, right? But we all want to change. But what I think is happening is we don't, or most of the time, we don't actually understand why, right? We say, okay, I want to change because I want to lose weight or I want to get more work done or I want to do these things, but why?
Mm.
Okay, why? Why does getting more work done matter? Right? Well, because I'll make more money. Okay, why? Right? Well, because money is good. Well, all right, but you have money. So why? Well, because then more people will see me as a higher social status. Okay,
Mm.
why? Well, right? When you really take it down and you find out it's all BS.
Right.
And I'm using that term BS, not the way you think I'm using it, but I'm using it because it's your belief system.
Mhm.
It's that deep rooted part of you that is settled down on these beliefs. And they all come, they're very common core beliefs that, we all have. And if you want to make a change that's lasting and you really want to be a different person, you got to figure out what's driving that desire for that change. And you got to figure out which belief system that is. And that takes time. Right. It takes coaching. It takes people like yourself, talking through as a nutrition consultant, right? Specifically for changing the belief around the food and the way that they interact with food. Mm-hmm. But it mostly takes an understanding of, hey, I haven't even figured out why I want to change yet. I haven't sat down and dealt with that shadow, dealt with that other side, dealt with that belief to figure out, oh man, okay. Because for me, when I have made those changes, and I have been lucky and fortunate enough to have been going down this path of change, it's taken some real, honest, look in the mirror stuff to say, why does this really matter to me? Mm. And when I get there, then I can start the process of change.
Yeah, I mean, those are great points. I think that oftentimes the answer to why someone would want to lose weight or why they would want to change their eating habits or move more or do some of these kind of like health-oriented goals, the answer that people give me is, well, because I think I should.
Yeah, that's perfect. That means you're at the very beginning of trying to figure out what the real reason is.
Right, yeah, yeah. But isn't that interesting though? That's as deep as a lot of people get, is I think I should. Someone told me I should.
Yeah.
I always kind of go back to context, right? And the context of our lives is really, truly important. And we know this. I mean, we have the thoughts about, well, the 4 people you hang out with most are going to dictate your success, et cetera, et cetera. Like I think people understand that, but I think it goes even more beyond just that. It's the context of all the information that your brain takes in. You had made a good point in a previous episode about how our brain can only work with the information that it's taken in, right? It's not there to generate new ideas per se. It can connect specific parts, specific ideas. It can generate new ideas of content that it's already taken in, but something that you've never even run into, it's not gonna generate new information, right? So for us in change, I think the first step of change is often just changing context, and that can be really simple. One of the reasons why I think people like to talk with me about food, and whether it's disordered eating or they're just looking to improve some habits, is because every week they'll get nice, healthy context. They'll get some sort of good context, and whether or not they choose to engage with the information or not is somewhat irrelevant, right? It's just a matter of getting the information into the brain. And I think in terms of change, whatever it is that someone is hoping to do, one simple thing they can do to achieve that goal is to just change the context. Change the context of your social media pages. Unfollow everything that doesn't serve you. Follow things that are somewhat positive or sending you messages that you would like the context or the contents of your mind to really work with.
Man, when you put change into the concept of just the only way you can change is what the information that you have coming in. Mm-hmm. I need to really reevaluate the things that I'm allowing in, and I definitely need to evaluate that. I guess more than I even thought until you put it in that context, because I do allow a lot of nonsense in.
They call it conscious guarding. And the idea of conscious guarding is pretty simple. Is if you're watching something that you know is like, or you're taking in information. I use it watching because TikTok and short video format is so popular. But say you're watching something that you know is garbage, you can be consciously guarding against that. You can know, okay, this is garbage, but I'm still going to watch it anyways. it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's still context for the brain. You don't have control whether or not your brain takes that information in and then manifests it in some way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this is problematic because especially in younger generations where they're growing up with a lot more contents, a lot more uh, context in general than we've ever had, more exposure to different contexts. They can take in this information, be purposely, consciously guarding of some of that, but it doesn't matter because this information is going to manifest. And so whether that's behaviors or habits or even thoughts, right? You're watching a bunch of people um, beat themselves up and share their negative mental chatter or be negative. Well, guess what the context of your mind is going to be like. It's going to be primarily negative, right? And we know this with news media. The whole point of media is attention, and it just so happens that negative information is very stimulating to our brains, and you get all this negative context, and boom, now things seem so bleak.
Well, it's so to take that one step further and make it a little more personal. They talk about what makes up your personality, right?
Mm.
And that's your thoughts, your actions, and your emotions. And if we're trying to capture attention, like the media is trying to capture your attention, or social media is trying to capture your attention, what they're trying to do is let you see something that sparks a thought, that sparks an emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it earlier, the negative emotions, we're way more cognizant of.
Mm.
And we know how to handle happiness and joy,
Mm.
but we don't always handle negative emotion the same way or as well. It's funny when you see a little kid. I was thinking about this the other day. Have you ever seen a little kid that doesn't know how to handle happiness or joy? And they just freak out and they're so happy and they stop.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? Of course you're trying to say stop that. Like you're not really sure what's going on, but that's what it is.
Mm.
They're learning how to handle happiness and joy in our society.
Yeah.
You can't just run around and stuff your face in every cake. I wish we could, right? But so we learned that, but then we kind of fall short on learning how to handle these emotions that pop up when we're triggered on purpose,
Mm.
and we just run down the rabbit hole. And I think that's what everybody's looking for when they're trying to capture your attention. Like, let them run down the rabbit hole. That'll stay on the platform longer. They'll search more things. More attention, more eyeballs, more money.
Yeah, negative emotion is really the battle that we're all kind of fighting. And when it comes to change, that's what people tell me. Well, this isn't me, and doing that thing that is serving to me, they'll admit that this is serving to me. That isn't me, and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what you're talking about, discomfort, handling that negative emotion. It is challenging. It is challenging to change.
Have you ever seen that? It's a cartoon about the dog that sits on the thumbtack. So it's it just shows the dog walk over, and there's a thumbtack clearly on the ground, not a nail, but just a thumbtack.
Yeah.
And the dog walks over and sits down, and he sits right on the thumbtack. And dogs have fur and whatever, and there's no like negative implication here. But the person says to the other person, like, why doesn't the dog get up? And the other person says, because it's not bothering him.
Mhm.
And that's it. It's not bothering him enough.
Right.
So it's just, that's why people don't change. It's really not bothering you enough. It might be bothering you. You might be in therapy for it. You might be telling people it's bothering you. It's the same thing when we talk about addiction, right? And I know I'm going to probably turn off a lot of people at the moment, but until it matters enough to you, you don't make the change.
Mm.
And it's a scary thing to think about because so many people have lost everything. And drugs are a different category altogether because they have an ability to take a hold of you and make them matter more than anything else. But fundamentally, it comes down to it. Until it matters enough to you, you don't change.
Yeah, it is a good point. they say that the most dangerous job is the one you just dislike, because not only is it going to continuously make you unhappy or perpetuate some feelings of unhappiness, it's not negative enough for you to change off of that.
I never heard that before, but yeah, that's so true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most dangerous
Oh.
place to be.
Man, think about your social circle and the people that you talk to, all that, that just dislike their job. I wish I had this. I wish I had that. I wish I made more money. I wish I had more vacation. I wish my boss wasn't a jerk, but it's fine.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. Good luck being stuck there for the rest of your days.
Yeah.
That's a riot. I never thought about it that way. It's funny because so many times, and this is my corporate America, hat going on, we talked about change management, right? or just manager in general. Yeah. And I met this woman, Sharon Marrow, awesome woman, and she has these rules, and one of them that stuck with me and will never leave me is you lead people, you manage tasks. So it's funny because when you think about change management, so many times they're talking about people when they should really be talking about the tasks or the activity or the process, right? But they're not. They're talking about people. And they're not talking about leading people through change. They're talking about change management. Like, we're going to manage this problem that we have, change, in such a way that we get through it. We're not going to, it's not, when you take a step back, no one wants that. What they want is, we want leaders to lead people through change, and we want people to manage the processes of change. And that's what we want. But in corporate America, that's not the way it's designed, discussed, thought of. Pretty crazy stuff.
It is. I mean, you could almost take that example and bring it to like a personal one, where oftentimes the best way to change is by doing actions that don't feel like yourself, doing actions that are uncomfortable, and we know that action precedes thought. So we can't wait around for that feeling of, ooh, this feels right. It feels right to change. It feels right to start getting up earlier. It feels right to start working on my diet or whatever it might be, because that moment never comes. We can't just think ourselves into change. We almost have to just do it, and then the thoughts and beliefs follow.
Absolutely. And are you familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's come into my world quite a bit lately, and the way that he describes and talks about change is exactly the same way you just talked about it, right? Just change. And it's, just calm down, just do that, right? But change first, act as if the change has already happened. And then when you catch yourself falling back into that previous mindset, notice from a place of already have changed and continue on. And almost as like a science experiment, try that way for X amount of time and evaluate and see what happens. That's how he discusses change. And I think it's really pretty spot on.
Yeah. I like the what you said there about almost reevaluating from a place of change, when you notice yourself reverting back. It is interesting. I might have to think a little bit more on that specific topic. But I would agree. I think that you have to do things in regards to change, whatever the habit is, whatever you're feeling like changing, you just have to do it more than what you've done in the past. And I always share that with people. You don't have to just decide to change and then be perfect with that change. I mean, that's kind of an impossible task. But maybe deciding to do something and doing it one more time a week than you've done previously.
I agree. I think you're spot on. And that is, by definition, change. So let's talk a little bit about what keeps people from changing. And I have one that I can tell you I've lived through. and currently live through.
Mhm.
And I'll admit here on the podcast, because we have a producer now, and we could cut things out if we need to. um, Imposter syndrome.
Mm.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. And because I think that's what keeps people from changing. I think that's what holds people back. And I'm going to say people as in I'm not talking about myself.
No,
So
you're perfect.
we're going to talk about people like the listeners. Maybe they deal with imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
You want to talk a little bit about what that is and kind of what your thoughts around it are?
I love this topic because I almost love imposter syndrome too. I've grown to really appreciate imposter syndrome because I think that it's a useful a useful feeling. We can all relate. I mean, if you haven't had a big change in your life recently or really ever, you may not be able to relate. But one of the most common areas people experience imposter syndrome is a job change. Almost every time you step into a new role, a new position, it feels really, really bad. It feels like you have no idea what's going on because you kind of don't. You really don't. I had quite extensive imposter syndrome when I started working with uh, clients who are struggling with disordered eating. I mean, those are complex mental health struggles, and I remember really worrying about the way I would say things, or just worrying that I wasn't helping someone enough. And you know what it did for me is it actually forced me to learn. This negative feeling it is a negative feeling.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, it's inherently negative. But what it did for me was allow me or give me some motivation to some degree to really pursue learning more. And I wouldn't have done it if I felt I was adequate at the job right when I stepped in. And I think it'd be very naive of me to think that I knew everything that I could just from, getting a job and working, slightly, with a client here or one or two clients or whatever. So I think that the imposter syndrome, yeah, is a good motivator as much as it's a negative feeling. Is a good motivator. Go learn, go challenge yourself.
So, since I don't want to make this about me, but I do want to ask more
Uh,
questions, how do you deal with that concept or those thoughts around, there's somebody out there that knows more. There's double PhDs, and and then if you go on social media, it appears as though there's millions of people that seem to know more on the topic that you're, an expert in. Like, how do you? That almost that's something that it is about me. Those are the things I'm dealing with, trying to figure out.
Is this therapy?
I know, maybe. Yeah, check back next week. We'll do Ryan. No, I'm just kidding. So go on, imposter syndrome.
Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be someone who knows more about a specific thing or is better at a specific task or looks better, is more aesthetic, or is more healthful. There always is. But I think for me, and I know that well and good, I know that there are people who know more about the topic than me. But as I get further into working with individuals who I serve, I recognize my value there. My value isn't to know everything. My value is, well, yeah, have a good baseline understanding of how these mental health struggles around food work. But maybe the way I present it to them is actually what's truly important. Maybe the way I connect with the people that I work is truly important. And over the last year or so, as I've gotten really comfortable with the majority of clients that I serve, it's been a number of years, but just definitely within the last year, I feel really comfortable serving whoever comes my way. I recognize that one of the most important things to change or to help someone change is connection, is just a rapport with someone. I met with someone, a kid the other day, and the parents were very worried. Ooh, I don't know if this is gonna work. I don't know if he's gonna behave for you or whatever it is. And I brought the kid onto the call, and you know what? Within a couple minutes, I'm talking about what he's doing at school and his shirt and yellow, and that's my favorite color too. And just the way that we were able to connect, and knowing that I really place a lot of emphasis on rapport building, it was fine. He really connected. He was engaged, and then I excused him from the call, and the parents were like, "Whoa, who was that?"
Well done.
Yeah, thanks. But it has nothing to do with what I knew or what I know, or comparison. It's more so just in that moment, it was just building a connection. And so I guess, back to your question, how do you deal with that? Well, everyone has their own purpose, their own strength. Yeah, we're all given a hand of cards, and we've got some crappy ones and some great ones, but until you play through the whole deck and give yourself a chance, you're not going to know which cards are the good ones that you actually hold. And so it's important to just be persistent, be enthusiastic, and continue working on what you're doing.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to take those to heart. Yeah. I don't deal with imposter syndrome every day, but one of the challenges that is being an entrepreneur is you don't get a lot of maybe you don't get a lot of feedback. You don't get a lot of okay, you're on the right path or you're doing the right thing, and maybe you need a coach for that. In the corporate world, you get that feedback, or hopefully you'd like to think you get that feedback pretty consistently. Or maybe it's from your boss or from your team. Things are going good, but when you're trying to build something on your own, or I guess on your own, you don't get that feedback. And doesn't it feel strange to ask for that feedback sometimes from people? Like, hey, how am I doing? Have you noticed that I'm doing good or bad? Or could you give me some info? Because I feel like that would be a big piece of helping with imposter syndrome in the way that you just mentioned, because it would help me learn.
Yeah, no, I can totally relate to that. And yeah, I had just been working on and opening Life Force Nutrition, the supplement company, and yeah, I'm feeling a lot of that. I've put in a lot of work and gotten everything set up and in a way that I'm happy with, and working on marketing and all this jazz, and yet there aren't too many people who've shared feedback. I've had plenty of orders and plenty of people who seem to want to support me, which is great. I'm super super grateful for that. But I also really haven't had anyone besides like one or two people be like, "Hey, this was good. This supplement was good, or this product quality is great, or this label is very enticing." I haven't had a lot of that. And we talked in an earlier episode. Don't take it personal. I'm not taking it personal, but I agree. It's kind of tough sometimes. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, and it would be, even just to like, hey, that looks good would be would be very helpful.
Well, I'll tell you, I do love the logo.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I do, and I love the white container.
Thanks.
I think those. That's what I've seen so far.
Nice. All
So
right.
I'll give you
Thanks, man.
something. I'll give you something, and I'm buying a probiotic
Okay.
because that runs right up my alley right now with the things that I'm trying to accomplish for my own personal health.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. But kind of going back to some more practical ways for change, and we've just talked about how imposter syndrome, which is kind of the result of change, kind of the result of doing something that is different to you. And I know you help a lot of people out with change in movement and change in diet and change in just life in general. For you, what are some personal, like maybe not personal, but really practical ways someone can implement change? Are there any like strategies that you use or share that really on a practical level that someone could do every day or a couple times a week to keep themselves accountable and to facilitate a little bit ease of change?
That's a great question. For me, it goes back to that asking yourself why. And when I have conversations with my clients and I talk to them about the things that they want to accomplish, maybe what I try to get them to do is ask themselves the question and then really listen to their own answer, right? Ask yourself the question, why? And so many times, intuitively, what comes up next is the answer.
Mm.
And then notice if you just push that answer aside because you didn't want it to be the answer. And that's one of the challenges that most of us have. We ask ourselves, why do I want to do this? And then maybe we need to go a little deeper. Why, right? Get down to the root cause. But when you start to make changes, notice if it does feel good, right? I want to get up at 5 a.m. every day. And I just lived through this. I want to get up at 5 a.m. every day. Well, I have clients that start at 6:30. I don't want to get up at 5 a.m. every day. I thought I did. I thought it would be that I'd be that person that's, the 4:45 and Jocko Willachek and all the people and all these things that we read about how good it is for you. The fact is, I did it for a while and I didn't want to. And it wasn't for me. And I actually now have noticed that most of my REM sleep comes between 5 and 6. So by getting up, by choosing this path that I didn't really want to choose because I didn't ask myself the right questions, I was just hurting myself.
You thought you should. You thought you should do that.
That's it, right? Today, back to the beginning, I thought I should, but I didn't think it all the way through. I read that it should, or I saw on social media that this is good. Yeah. But in the end, for me personally, wasn't good. Not good. I sleep best from 5 to 6 a.m. Please leave me alone from 5 to 6 a.m. So as far as change management, right, we want to manage the activities. Yeah. I mean, if we can find a coach or a leader to lead us through and talk about internal change and really help us identify the things that matter to us, that's impactful. Then we can set up a schedule, or we can set up these, check-ins and these events, or to your point, maybe we do one thing one more time, right? I want to go to the gym 5 days a week. How many times are you going right now? 1. Okay, well, that seems like a big jump, right? How about we go to 2? Right. And then have a coach and have someone talk you, check in with you. Hey, it's Wednesday. Are you on day 2 yet? Right? Or it looks like we're going to have to go on the weekend because we didn't make it. And that type of stuff, it can be very, very impactful for people. And, you see it in your own field. But always remember, as a leader and as a coach, if you're only managing the activity, you want to lead the people. You want to help them. To your point earlier, you want to relate to them and be empathetic and talk to them about their shirt and the way that they feel and all this stuff, and help them understand what really matters to them. That's where true change comes from.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think I echo the sentiment that change should be pretty subtle. It shouldn't be, if you're waking up at 9, you shouldn't aim for 5. You should.
I wasn't. It was okay. Fine.
You're okay. Make it subtle and make the goal to be just doing more than what you've done in the past. And if you've never gone to the gym, the one time, that's change, right? That's great. And maybe to your point earlier about being the change, maybe you just act as if you're that person. You do the gym one time a week, and now you are the person who goes to the gym one time a week. You're not the person who's never gone to the gym, and then now once in a while they go to the gym once in a week. No, you're the person who goes once a week. Just as if you dabble in guitar, you play a little bit, 2 or 3 chords. Someone asks, "Hey, are you a musician?" 9 times out of 10, the person's gonna say, "Nah, I'm not, but I play a little guitar." No, you're a musician. Be the change. Yeah. Be that change.
Well said. And maybe we can wrap this up. But when I first started teaching mindfulness and breath work, and people would say, "Well, what do you do?" And I would be like, I guess I do some stuff, right? But that was only because I knew the answer. I knew that's what I do. I knew that I teach people, how to look inward. I knew I teach mindfulness. I knew I teach breath work. I knew I teach meditation. I know I teach yoga, but I wouldn't say it. And I had imposter syndrome. Why? Because all these other people that I see online, or I watch on YouTube, or I read about, they're all experts and they're all better than me in my own head. Mm-hmm. So why would I say that's what I do? But through practice and coaching and training, challenge, now I understand. I've decided that's what I do. That's who I am. Mm-hmm. And at some point that had to happen. I don't remember exactly what day it happened, but at some point it did happen. So now I can sit here with you and tell you, yes, I am somebody. I am a mindfulness coach. I do teach breath work, and I do teach yoga, and I love it.
That's awesome. How empowering is that? I can see like you light up as you say that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's empowering, and it's empowering to say you're the person that is a musician. It's empowering to say that you are the person that made the change that they wanted to make.
Change is so empowering. And every time someone goes through radical change as I'm working with them, I always love to bring them to that reality that it feels so nice to feel like you've got locus of control of your life, to feel like you've done something and you're not just condemned to the same old daily routine that you don't like. So no, that's a wonderful point.
Right on. Well, if you want to learn more or listen more, you can find us on Spotify. You can find us on YouTube, and we both have Instagram. As much as we just condemn social media the whole time, it is a good. We do put stuff out there on there.
Yeah.
So thanks for listening.